Hey, kind of a spur of the moment video because like I've been playing a lot of Destiny and it's pretty fun. It's got that, the feedback loop of the shoot and loot, the Diablo style, fight shit, get loot stuff. But the thing that's fucking really made it difficult for me to get into is the complete and utter lack of any narrative context. And like I really need that. I really need some narrative context. Like, I've never been able to get into, like, games like Counter-Strike, which are just, like, team deathmatch type things with, like, no overarching thing. Even something like Titanfall was way better at getting me into the gameplay because it had a story. It didn't really have a story, but it had like it had some pomp and circumstance around it that made it a little bit easier for me to get into. Like, you don't need to give me this huge backstory to justify this conflict or anything, but something. Uh, it's I even if it's just, like Doom, the most simple fucking story in all of video games, like Marine base on Mars, all hell breaks loose, literally, go kill the demons. What else do you need? And fucking Destiny has been really dropping the ball because, like, it's really disappointing, especially coming from the guys who did Halo. And like, obviously, like, it's easy to tell that like there's all these stories about massive upheaval throughout Bungie during like a year before Destiny was supposed to come out, and obviously that's the reason. But it's because like the setup for Destiny has so much promise to it. I mean, like think about it. Like it actually has a lot of not allegories, like parallels to other science fiction stuff that makes it even more exciting because like the story of setup of Destiny is like humanity gets to Mars and what they find there is this like huge alien structure just floating overhead. It's this giant pristine perfect impossible white ball, and like immediately it brings like thoughts to 2001 A Space Odyssey, which had the like the obelisk, the giant imposing fucking intimidating spire of just a black fucking tower. And they do kind of the same thing, whereas the obelisk found a subhuman primate species and elevated them by giving them information, like projecting more evolved mentality into their brain, and that facilitated their evolution to eventually go on and become humanity and start venturing out into the stars, whereupon they would eventually, one human would join back up with their creator and then join with it to create a new being. That was the plot of Space Odyssey. Like the how going crazy part is what everyone remembers, but the story of Space Odyssey is the aliens that sent the obelisk to Earth and created humanity. That was the reason for the mission. That was the reason they were going out into space in the first place. And at the end, that's like, oh my god, it's full of stars. That's what's happening. He's meeting with the alien intelligence that created mankind and fusing with it and becoming this new deity that's a star child. That was the final shot where it's the baby in space. That's a star child, and it's like a fucking god or whatever. And like the traveler, which is what the white ball in Destiny is, kind of does the same thing, where except it finds a humanity that's already making its way out onto the galactic stage. Just in its own neighborhood, of course. Just like one planet over. But that's still an incredible amount of progress, right? And we find the Traveler, and and like through, I imagine like similar but impossible to describe means, it imposes all of this knowledge and technology onto mankind that like boosts their development by hundreds of thousands of years, and like almost overnight humanity is able to start colonizing within their own solar system, to set up colonies on the moon and Mars, to terraform Venus and turn it from this like stormy gas giant into a lush tropical jungle planet. And humanity enjoys this like fucking golden age until like out of nowhere this fucking presence, this unknowable, unfathomable darkness, which is a contrast to the light, which is what the Traveler bestows. You know, it's like technology that might as well be magic thing is called the light. And then the darkness shows up, this force, this undescribable malignant fucking shit just shows up, and it's been chasing the Traveler across the fucking universe through galaxies upon galaxies, because the Traveler has stopped at various planets that it's found life on and uplifted them. But then the darkness shows up and the Traveler fucking shits its pants and runs away, leaving the planet that it just uplifted to be consumed by the darkness and add to the horde of just fucking shit that's chasing it down. And when it finally gets to Earth, it, like, perhaps inspired by the species that it has uplifted, it decides, no, I'm not gonna fucking pussy out anymore, and it stands defiant to fight off against it. And that was the Cataclysm, where the Traveler finally stood its ground and fought back against the darkness, and it was this fucking, like, insane bullshit event that just destroyed 99% of everything humanity had built. And like billions upon billions of members of its species like went out, like just blasted off into the stars with no destination in mind, just being like, we gotta escape this. And for so long that they eventually evolved into this entire new species. This robot race was created, and over however much time developed into their own species. And like all of the planets that had been colonized just get fucking conquered and ripped asunder in some cases, or completely, you know, inhabited by the you know, various species that compose the darkness. And like almost all of Earth gets conquered, and like only one city is left that is still inhabited by humans and is still safe, because the Traveler made this like huge sacrifice of itself to like not defeat, but to just hold back the fucking encroachment of the darkness, to the point that it is, by the time we see it in game, the Traveler's left cracked open and just scarred and broken to bits, like this once pristine, perfect, immaculate, protective, like soothing white ball of pure fucking alien craziness is now just all gross and broken open and busted up. And it was because of that that humanity didn't get wiped out in the first place. But that wasn't a defeat. The darkness is still out there. It's still trying to conquer humanity. That was just a, you know, temporary stopgap. And it's probably impossible for the darkness to truly be defeated. And it's probably going to win eventually, inevitably. But, you know, humanity still stands in defiance. And, like, it's this great fucking, like, crazy biblical setup to this, like, space fucking epic type thing with like eldritch fucking warfare and all that crazy shit. And then what do we get in game? I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain. And I haven't gotten to it yet, but the DLC is supposed to fix that by actually having a story with Nathan Fillion in it. But like, it was just I played it and I was like, I don't know what we're doing or why we're doing it. We're just shooting bugs and robots in Covenant. They're just blatantly the Covenant. And again, it's super frustrating because this is Bungie, the guys who brought us Halo, which, well, not perfect, actually had a really great expanded universe to it. And so, like, playing fucking Destiny just made me want to replay Halo on my little brother's Xbone, and he has the Master Chief Collection, so I decided to just play that a little bit, and it made me think about, like, the story of Halo, and, like, the games themselves aren't heavy on narrative. They're better at providing context than fucking Destiny is. And they have these great set piece moments that everyone always remembers, but, like, the story of Halo is kind of elevated by its expanded universe. Like, I read those 3 books, like Reach, The Flood, like the one based on the game, like the prequel to the game, the novelization of the game, and then like the aftermath of the game explaining how they got back to Earth after the events of Halo. And I always really love the story for that because it explains this whole, like, the origins of the Spartan program, and it drops all these, like, pretty subtle hints about the lore of the Forerunners and all this insight into Covenant society, and it was just really fucking wicked. So, like, I don't know, I just thought about, maybe doing a little video explaining the lore of Halo that I'm aware of. Because, like, I think some of it's different now. Bungie always had this policy where, like, new canon overrides old canon because they're too fucking lazy to keep anything fucking straight. So might as well just go, okay, drew over the old painting and now just pretend the painting isn't there. But, like, it always had all this interesting fucking shit, like Cortana, like, AI's lifespans being, like, 7 years, because after 7 years, they just absorb so much fucking information that they just go fucking ballistic and forget how to breathe, is the way it was always described. And how, like, these subtle details about how, like, Cortana absorbed so much information from Halo during the events of Halo that it shortened her lifespan by years. And, like, all the fucking little details about Dr. Hasley, who created the Spartan program, and how she never drank her fucking coffee, so it would always get cold. And so by the time she'd drink it, she'd like, drink cold coffee. Why didn't I drink it when it was hot? I was so absorbed in my work that I didn't drink the fucking coffee. And all the other Spartans besides 117 Master Chief, the main fucking character, there's like a whole shitload of other Spartans, and they were all fucking cool. Like fucking Linda, who was a fucking sniper, and Kelly, who was fucking badass, and Billy, who had his knife. I think it was Billy, at least. Sam, who died. Oh, so many cool fucking Spartans. Like, even redshirt Spartans, who only had, like, a couple pages of screen time before they got fucking killed for drama. And all this, like, lore about the Spartans having Ali Oxenfree as, like, a universal, like, it's all safe thing, and they'd go, like, they'd make a smiley face with their fingers on their helmet because they're not allowed to be emotional because they were fucking born and bred. They're not born and bred, but they were, like, because, like, the backstory of the Spartans is, like, so, like, the fucking UNFC, the United Nations, I guess, SC. I don't know what the SC stands for, like, Service Corps, I guess? Like, it's just a combination of all the militaries and all the nations of the planet. Like, it's, like, the beginning of the Halo universe, well, the very, very, very beginning of the Halo universe is, like, typical sci-fi, like, are predecessor, like a not quite benevolent super race who were known as the Forerunners, who like conquered the entire galaxy or some shit, and they did all these experiments on it. Like they discovered the flood, and they were the ones who created the halos and most of the technology that the Covenant uses. And like, but the flood got out of control, so they created the halos to just kill all life in existence, just to stop the spread of the flood, because the flood are like zombie parasites who eat the bodies of anything and just spread. And like the halos don't kill the flood, it just kills their food source so that they can't infect new people and keep spreading, and eventually their hosts will die, like just decompose. So like the flood got out of control, and the Forerunners had to set off the halos and just kill everything. And the only things that survived were shit that was so outside of that range of the halo blast that like the flood would never in a million years have gotten to it. And it just so happened that humanity on Earth was one of those species, including all the species of like the Covenant. And all of these species were species that the Forerunners had like created. Like, you know, like how when you get like a sea monkey, when you get like a package of sea monkeys and you just make it in your little fishbowl and it creates a whole society, and you're like, oh, look at the little fucking sea monkeys, they're stupid. Anyway, I'm gonna fuck off and keep doing my fucking shit over here. That's what the Forerunners did. They just you know, fucking threw some germs onto this little fucking blue planet that was just an ocean. They threw some germs down there and they said, ha, and then they left. And then that's where, you know, life on Earth came from. And, you know, by the time the story starts in Halo, and there's all these cool details about how, like, the Covenant uses the, like, plasma weapons from the Forerunners, but they think of them as, like, holy religious objects, and they just use them with no real degree of understanding. And so when humans get their hands on them and start researching them and trying to reverse engineer technology based on them, when the Covenant find out about that, they freak their fucking shit because they're like, blasphemy! You can't do that! What the fuck? Now we're gonna extra double hard genocide you! Because, like, the whole war was I'll get to that. Well, the whole war was organized by, like, the prophets who lead the Covenant, and they know the most about the Forerunners and all that shit, and they found out about how humans were made by the Forerunners, and they were like, let's just go kill them. Because we don't want to... And they don't want anyone to know about the truth, because, like, the Forerunners are probably... The humans are probably the closest to the Forerunners, and they're mad jelly, and, like, humans have, like, the most, it's one of those, like, genetic reader type things where all their technology is so advanced that it's like it detects how much Forerunner is in front of it before it'll start working, and humans have the most Forerunner in them compared to all the other species, so they have the most potential to use all this technology, and they're like, fuck that, go kill those guys, because they're fucking infidels or whatever, just fucking wipe them off the face of the earth. And so by the time the Halo story starts, it's basically Mobile Suit Gundam, where there's Earth, and then the colonies are being jackasses. Well, like, humanity has colonized a bunch of different planets. Like space travel is a thing. Like, it's a little bit more realistic than it usually is. Like, we have faster than light travel, but like most of the crew on these ships that do faster light travel have to go into hypersleep. So like it still takes like months of travel, but it's not instantaneous, but it's still like, folding fucking space. Or, whatever the explanation. It's not possible. It's all science fiction, so it doesn't really matter. But it's a little bit more down to earth. And so humanity's colonized all these planets, but there's, fucking asshole colonies and rebel colonies and, like, space pirates and shit. And they're like, okay, we're the military, so we're fucked up. So we're gonna do this crazy program, the Spartan program, where we're gonna kidnap children, like a bunch of children, and, like, train them from, inception, from, like, age 5 to be soldiers, like the Spartans, hence the name, and just, like, so young that they don't know any other life but that, and literally indoctrinate them. It's very upfront about that, the implications of it. And, like, they don't tell anyone that they're doing it. It's really top secret, really black ops shit. So they make flash clones of the kids that they're kidnapping and replace them overnight. And the clones are called flash clones because they're, like, really low effort clones who are going to degenerate and die within, like, a couple years. So the parents will just think, oh no, my kid tragically got ill and died, not knowing that it was just a clone, and the real version of their kid got fucking kidnapped and turned into a fucking Spartan. And that's where, Master Chief and all these other Spartans, I should pull up a list because there's so many cool fucking Spartans. And, like, the reason they're so big and badass and got all this extra shit to them is because, like, then they started doing, like, genetic research. That's where Dr. Hazley comes in. Like, that was always, like, a part of the plan for the program, but, like, they had to kidnap the kids and train them to be soldiers for, like, decades in advance before they even got around to doing the genetic fuckery with them. And so by the time they got them, like, by the time they were fucking, indoctrinated soldier dudes, then they started doing the genetics on them when they were in, like, their I want to say very early 20s. I think they might have still been teenagers, though. I don't remember 100%. And there's this great chapter in the Reach book where John, Master Chief 117, is like, I'm trying to fight, like, the anesthetic and not pass out. Like, he thinks it's like a game or something, like it's one of their tests. Like they always started thinking of the tests as a game, like a trick, it's a puzzle. Oh, we gotta figure it out. And he was like, I'm trying, like, this is one of your tests, right? I'm having trouble figuring it out, though. What's the trick? How do I win? And like, Dr. Hazley can't fucking handle it. She's like, oh my god, I took these fucking children, and I'm turning them into fucking monsters. What the fuck? And, like, the, like, actual military dude guy is like, just don't die. Just don't fucking die. What the fuck? Like, they're all kind of freaking out, but it's way too late to backpedal on it. Like, they've already invested all this fucking like, resources, and like, what, they're not gonna quit and send them back home. What the fuck? So after that, like, a bunch of Spartans fucking die. Like, a bunch of them just don't survive the process of the genetic manipulation or whatever. So, like, a bunch die. Like, 3 survive but are rendered comatose or physically disabled. And, like, there's this great scene where, like, they pass through the room with the Spartans who survived, but you wish they hadn't survived. And only one is able to salute. And he's all shaky and fucked up. And he's like, I'm still a soldier. And it's super fucking depressing. And then, like, there's a couple chapters where John is just like, holy shit, I'm a fucking Superman. And he starts doing, like, discovering, like, I'm way stronger, I'm way faster, I'm, like, I can think so quickly that time seems to slow down a little bit. And there's this great thing where, like, it happens in that book, but then the next book kind of explains retroactively what happened. Where like in the book, it's presented that a bunch of ODST, which is another really cool fucking thing about the Halo universe, a bunch of ODST troops like pick a fight with John while he's in the gym just chilling out, and like they just pick a fight with him over some stupid bullshit, and he beats the ever loving fucking shit out of him. Like he puts him in the fucking hospital. One of them he renders fucking like catatonic or something, and he's like, and then they're like, yeah, our fucking crazy genetic manipulation totally paid off. Thank God. And then like in the next book, it's revealed that like the commanding officer who commanded those ODST was like, my fucking soldiers have been loyal fucking dudes for all this time, and you just throw them in there into the meat grinder for your little genetic toy, your little fucking super soldier experiment. Just collateral damage. Fuck you and fuck you and fuck you. It's really great. And it's not until later that they get the Mjolnir armor. It's like they get sent on their very first mission, which is to like kidnap some fucking rebel dude, like some really high up important rebel dude, and they infiltrate this fucking like base, and it goes off without a hitch. Like John gets shot, but like no one dies, and they do it perfectly. They kill a bunch of fucking pirates or rebels or whatever. They kidnap the dude. They get out of there. It's like went perfect. And then like during the debriefing, we're like, yeah, our maiden voyage, our Spartan program's really paying off. Like John's got his little purple heart because he got shot, and he gets a purple heart, and he like spends all day fucking polishing it so you can like see your reflection, and he's so proud of himself. And then they go out, and then they're like, yeah, we're gonna get debriefed, and then the military dudes come out, they're like, so there's aliens, and they're really fucked up, and they're just killing everyone. And they show footage where the Covenant came in and just fucking blew them the fuck away. Like it wasn't even funny. It was so fucking one-sided. And they glass an entire colony, which means they bombard it from orbit so hard and for so long that the surface is completely like a glass sheen. The entire planet's completely uninhabitable. All traces of life have just been completely obliterated. It's all fucking gone. Everyone's fucking dead. And there's this great part where like John's like, I felt so proud of my little purple heart, but now I feel like an asshole. All these people died. How many of them deserve purple hearts? It's this great like oh man, fucking perspective gained moment. And that's when like they gotta start, stepping shit up, and that's when like the war with the Covenant really kicks off. And there's all these other like scenes of how other characters in the like the universe are dealing with it. Like there's a whole chapter showing like there's a bunch of little chapters showing like Commander Keyes, who is like the captain dude in the first game, and how he's got his little bridge crew. And those chapters really read like a fucking Star Trek book, only like maybe more like a Battlestar Galactica book. And like it explains all the like tactics of like space battles, and all his little bridge crew are all these characters. Like there's like 6 characters who are his bridge crew. And there's this chapter where like he gets in this space battle with like 2 Covenant ships, and he does some crazy tactical bullshit to fuck them. Like the reason the Covenant fucked them over for so long is because they have shield technology, and we don't have shield technology, and it's just really fucking hard to get around that. They have shields. Like you can fire a fucking nuke. There's one chapter I think where like there's a space battle going on. It's very early on, before the one I was just talking about, where they send out these like fighter pilots to get into a dogfight with the ship to distract it, and then they shoot a nuke at it, and it blows everything away, including the fighter jets they sent in there to dogfight. And like the guy who ordered it fucking salutes him like, your fucking sacrifice was not in vain. Like, I know I sent you to your deaths there, but we had to do it to beat the ship. And then like the dust clears and the ship's still fucking there, not a fucking scratch on it, because the nuke was totally didn't do shit because there was a shield. Like, what the fuck? Like, you could shoot 20 nukes at it, and that might get rid of the shield, which will recharge in a couple minutes. You know? So it's like, fuck. And, like, the reason Captain Keyes is so bad is because, like, he does some shit to, like, drop a nuke inside of their shield and blows it up. And, like, one of the dudes on his bridge crew starts freaking out and acting insubordinate, and he won't follow orders. And he's like, he's gonna get us killed! Game over, man! Game over! And all the other dudes on his bridge crew are like, fucking shut up, man. Die with some dignity. We're all resigned to it. Just go back to your fucking post and die like a good soldier. Follow your fucking orders. And he's like, and then he fucking does it, and he beats both of the ships. And the way it's written, it's like for like a minute, everyone's just sitting there fucking stunned, like, how are we still alive? And like, you know, one of the bridge officers gets up and like, sir, you are fucking badass. And he's like, I know. And then he has to fire the guy who acted insubordinate to him and replace him. And he's another really interesting character, too. And he, like, you know, he's been reprimanded for, like, not following dress code and for being too casual. You know, it's a fucking military operation. And, like, everyone kind of, like, turns their nose up at him at first, but then he's really, really good at his fucking job. So everyone's like, okay, you're one of us now. So much great shit. And, like, they start, like, you know, the Mjolnir armor, which is the, you know, iconic Master Chief armor, the Spartan armor. That's experimental, and it doesn't have the shield technology yet that it has in the games. And they start using that, and it's better than nothing, because it's still armor, but it doesn't have the shield, so it's not super great, but it's better than nothing. And they get sent in, and there's this, like, they go on one mission to, like, infiltrate a fucking Covenant ship and put a nuke inside of it and blow it from the inside out, because that's easier than trying to fight them legit in the space battle, because, like, not everyone's a fucking Commander Keyes over here. And they do it, they drop it in there, but then, like, John's fucking buddy gets fucking shot, and they can't get him out. Like, he's like, if you try and carry me with you, they'll kill us all. Just leave me here, and I'll defend the nuke for as long as I can. I'll set it off fucking manually. Just get the fuck out. And like, you know, they're trying, like, that's the one moment where they kind of buckle a little bit, where they're like, no, like, the soldierness kind of drains out of them for a second. But then, like, okay, fucking good job. But they gotta go, and there's this, like, callback to when, like, his commanding officer tells him, like, in the military, the moment is going to come where you are going to have to command men to their death. You're giving them an order and telling them to go on a mission that you know they will die. And it's in that, you have to do it, but you gotta, like, it's lives spent versus lives wasted. Meaning, like, will they die for something, and will their deaths, like, at least mean success in whatever you were sending them to die for? Or was it you're wasting their lives, and they're, like, it didn't need to happen, and that's a fuck up on your part? And then, like, when he's leaving his buddy there to die, like, the first Spartan who fucking dies, like, officially on a mission, he's like, now I understand. I understand what he meant by lives spent versus lives wasted. And so they leave, and then there's this always this cool lore where, like, Spartans are always listed as missing in action, because you can't say a Spartan died. That would be too, like, catastrophic for the morale, because, like, they've been, spinning these Spartan super soldiers in the media to be these fucking, like, crazy, invincible, almost mythical figures. Or, like, the civilians back home and the rank and file are like, these guys are invincible super soldiers, and we are going to win the war because they exist. And so if you say, oh yeah, they died, there goes that image, so you have to list them as missing in action. There's a lot of shit. I'm not even to the games yet. And there's this great chapter where, like, I think it's I think it's when they get the Mjolnir armor that they're just, getting used to it, because, like, they get the armor and it makes them even stronger and faster, and to the point where, like, he salutes Dr. Hazley out of instinct. Like, he doesn't even think about it. And he does it so fast that he smacks himself in the fucking head and he breaks a finger and he, like, gives himself a massive bruise on his face through the helmet. And she's like, you can't just, every single action you do needs to be a deliberate, like, you move so much faster and you're so much stronger now that if you just, work with your usual automatic autopilot soldier moves, you're going to fuck up. It's like when you play on Guitar Hero and you play on normal for a long time and then you go back down to easy and suddenly you're too fast for the game and you're anticipating it being faster than it really is and you start fucking up. That's what it's like. And so they spend like a month in this special training area where, like, they just go in and they completely lose track of them. Like, they have no idea where they are. And there's this scene, like, after a month where, like, Dr. Hazley comes in and says, hey, where are my fucking Spartans? What did you do with them? Like, you lost my Spartans. And he shows them, like, they send a crew in to, like, just, try and scout it out and try and find them, like, fucking hide and seek. And then out of nowhere, the Spartans just descend down and fucking neutralize them, non-lethally, but still really fuck them up, and just take all their supplies and then kidnap them and just vanish all in the space of like a minute. And she's like, what the fuck was that? And they're like, I don't know. I don't even know where they got the rope gear for that. Like, we didn't give them that. They just have that now. Where the fuck did they get it? It's this, like, they really do a good job of establishing Spartans as being this, like, fucking insane thing. It's really great. And there's one flashback that's also great that established the Ollie Ollie Oxenfree thing where, like, even as teenagers, they had to deal with, it's really funny because, like, the idea, it's kind of a plot hole where, like, the idea is Spartans are built up as being these, like, super badass soldier dudes that all the normal rank and file look up to as, like, mythical, impossible heroes. But then every time the Spartans have to deal with military personnel during training or whatever, or, like, when they're out of uniform, there are these fucking assholes who are like, fuck you, you science experiment. You're fucking stupid, and I'm a really generic, one-dimensional villainous figure. And then they beat him. And, like, the end of the book is the thing on Reach. And Reach was a big deal. It goes completely unexplained in the games. Where, like, you start up the game, and they're like, I can't imagine playing Halo and not having read the Reach book because it explains fucking nothing. Like, you start that game up, and the opening cutscene is Commander Keyes. He's like, how did they beat us here? We made a blind jump. And Cortana's like, hey man, we just jumped from Reach. We just ripped a hole in space-time. And blah blah. And you're like, what the fuck is going on? What are you talking about? And you don't really know anything about, like, who the Covenant are, what they are, or what the war is, what Spartans are, who Master Chief is. You don't know what Reach is. You don't know why Commander Keyes is a badass. So, like, I mean, you don't really need that because you play the game and it's kind of a generic, bogs, basic, simple, sci-fi military thing. And you don't need a lot to go on when it's a game. But the book really, like, establishes fucking everything, and it really elevates it, I think. Like, like, the whole thing with Reach is, it was like Earth 2.0. It was like the next best thing, the next planet that humanity had colonized, and it was like big and badass, and everyone was there. It was the happening place to be, Daddy-O. And then, fucking the Covenant show up and attack it. And, like, that was really where humanity was like, we gotta make a stand here, because Reach is really, really important. And all the media are, like, that's why there was the game Halo Reach, which was pretty good. Pretty good, but it also had this, like, whole vibe of hopelessness, because Reach is doomed. So, like, when you're playing that game, you're like, well, none of these dudes are going to survive. Reach is doomed. It's going to be lost. They're going to lose Reach. There's nothing anyone can do to avoid that. And it has this really oppressive sense of, like, fucking do your best. Do not go quietly into that good night or whatever. And that's the vibe it has in the book, too. And in the first book, when you read it, it's all from John's perspective, and he's getting a team together to go and attack this fucking, like, liberate this, like, battle satellite that's being invaded by the Covenant, and the rest of the Spartans, like, all of them are going down to Reach to help get boots on the ground. And so that's from John's perspective, and he goes off on his thing with the dudes he brings, and I think they all die. I think one might have lived, and then she shows up later. I don't remember the specifics, but, like, he goes over there and tries to do that thing, and I think he fails, and that's when he gets on the ship with Commander Keyes and gets put into stasis, and then they go off into the first Halo game. But then in the third book, I think, the Aftermath, it explains what happened to all the other Spartans who had been established as characters in Reach. What happened to them on the planet when they went down there to fight. And, like, it's written from Billy's perspective, and he's, like, playing with his fucking knife. And he's like, yeah, it's my knife. And then, like, John comes in, and you see it from, like, the, like, lower ranked Spartan's perspective. And he's like, and he's like, I'm gonna go do this mission. And Kelly stands up and she's like, I volunteer to go on it with you. And Billy's like, fuck you, she was always faster than me. I hate how fast she is. I wanted to volunteer. And then John's like, nope, you guys are going down there to fight. And, in the book, it's always like all the Spartans look exactly the same because they all just have the normal green Mjolnir armor, but in my head, I always gave them different color armor. So, like, Kelly was pink, obviously. Linda was yellow. Billy had blue. My imagination's just crazy. And what they do to get onto the planet is, like, they go down there in their dropship, but then I think they have to abandon the dropship, and they just, like, drop down there, like, just falling onto the planet. And, like, Kelly, like, fucking crashes into a tree, and, like, another guy busts into a rock and makes a crater in the rock, and they survive. Like, a bunch of them die. I think, like, half a dozen Spartans die, but a bunch of them live. Like, most of them live, and they go on to fight. And, like, there's this, like, they do a bunch of fighting, and then later they meet up with Dr. Hazley, and they're like, Mom! She's like, eh. Because she's a stone cold bitch. And, like, she checks them over and, like, gives them a medical recap, and they're all fucked up, but they're all keep fighting. And, like, Kelly was the most Kelly was a badass. She was like, I want to play as her. She's so cool. Like, she had a punctured lung and a broken ankle, and like just all these fractures, and she was still fighting just as hard as anyone else. For the life of me, I forget what happens to them. I think they get off of Reach and get met up with later, but I'm not 100% sure. That third book got really weird. Like they found this Covenant artifact that let them go through a slipstream in like space time, and it was sort of like the Nether in Minecraft, where like you go into this other dimension, and moving 2 feet in that dimension moves you 2 miles in like the real world or whatever. It's this really bizarre sequence. And like the Covenant shoot plasma missiles, and then like they randomly get teleported around and hit each other, and their shields don't work in there, and it's a really bizarre sequence. But I think when they come out of it, they're back at Reach, and they're like, "Oh fuck!" And Reach has been like completely glassed except for this one area, this one little like fucking square meter of land, acre of land that they haven't glassed, and they're trying to like invade it on foot. But that's where all the Spartans who were on Reach who are still alive were, and they're defending it. And I think like Kelly and that group and Dr. Hazley and all them are somewhere else on the planet, and they end up there and get picked up by everyone else. I have the least memory of this book compared to the first two, to be honest. It had all these cool characters also. It had Sergeant Johnson, and there's this funny scene where John's like, "How the fuck are you still alive?" And he's like, "Retcon." Because in the game, like, you come across Sergeant Johnson a bunch of times, and he can die in every single one of your encounters with him, and he'll still show up later anyway. And then at the end, when you beat it on Legendary, there's this cutscene of him fighting with this elite, and then they look over, and the ship's blowing up, and the halo's gonna blow up, and they're like, "Well, this is it. Let's go out into it together." It was a joke scene, but still, like, no one on Halo was supposed to survive. Like, Master Chief survived, and then in the book, a couple other people survived too. Oh man, the fucking novelization for the game adds all this fucking extra shit. It explains like all the other members of the ship who survived and what they were doing. Like, they had an HQ. There's this whole side story from the perspective of an elite in particular, and his grunt sidekick. And they had a really cool story where, like, this one elite had an encounter with fucking Master Chief and got owned super hard, but survived. And, like, the grunt group, that the main grunt character, they went in there and they're like, "We're just gonna get killed. I mean, that's our job, or cannon fodder. Fucking, this sucks." And they find this elite that had been fucking owned, and they're like, "Here's our ticket out of here." And they drag him out, and they take him back to their ship and get the fuck out of there under the pretense of saving a superior officer. And then later, they're chilling out in their grunt quarters, and they're like, "Yo, dude who was in charge, who told us to do that, you're getting called up." And they all think he's in trouble for abandoning, like, they're like a crazy honor-bound. That's what the Covenant's deal is. Like, they're very Soviet Russia, where, like, retreat is betrayal and you get executed on the spot, right? Like, they don't do retreats. They don't do tactical retreats. And so, like, they think he's in trouble, and then he goes in there, and he's like, "You did a good job saving me. Good on you." And he's like, "Oh." And he's like, "So you're my fucking secretary now." And he's like, and he get this cool black armor, and like, they have this whole extended story throughout that book where they go on all their little misadventures as a little Covenant duo, and it's the best. I love the grunts. The grunts were always my favorite. Like, they're so kawaii. you know? So I always relished the chapters from the grunt's perspective because they're my favorite. And they have this whole story where, like, they keep trying to fucking fight Master Chief, and he can't be stopped because he's the demon. And they keep narrowly surviving. And then, like, by the end, the grunt is just sick. Like, they have a legitimate character development. They have a character arc. The grunt starts out being very cowardly and subservient, and throughout his experiences, he becomes more, like, jaded and apathetic and confident. And the fucking elite, because he failed and failed and failed so many times, he starts getting more paranoid and unhinged, and he's like, if I go back to the Covenant base, I'm gonna get executed for fucking retreating because I lost, but I survived, and there's only so many times you can lose and survive before someone goes, you're a coward, and execute you, so, we're like, fucking kill this fucking demon, I gotta kill him. And so the grunt's just like, fucking shut up, dude, fucking whatever. Like, there's this part where, near the very end, because in the game, the Covenant occupied the Pillar of Autumn after it had crash landed, and, you know, at the end of the game, Master Chief goes there to blow up the core of the engine to, like, destroy Halo. And so he goes there and fights a bunch of Covenant to get through there, and, like, before he showed up, like, way before, he was, like, dealing with the flood or whatever, and they go there because they know he's gonna go there at some point, or just to be like, fucking what, we need to regroup, we're running low on rations or whatever. And there's this scene where, like, they're overlooking the Pillar of Autumn, and they're like, should we get ready to go down there? And there's this scene where the grunt's like, he felt tempted to just take his pistol out and shoot him in the fucking head and go down there himself, come what may. But he's like, no, I'll let him live, because it reflects better on me if I go down there with an elite, because then, you know, it makes it look better. And so they go down there, and there's this scene where, like he kind of hides himself away, and he's like, I don't want to deal with anyone's bullshit, so you're my voice, or whatever, because they're, like, this special ops Covenant group. And everyone on the Pillar of Autumn doesn't know what a fucking failure he is, but he's still crazy paranoid, so he stays out of sight, and the grunt speaks for him. And there's this scene where they're unloading cargo or whatever, and he's with a group of jackals, and jackals are higher in the hierarchy than grunts, and he's like, we gotta fucking check every single fucking box that comes in. And they're like, fuck it, just send it through. And he's like, no, we gotta open it up and check it. Fuck you. And they're all like, me, fucking grunt, stupid piece of shit, we're gonna eat you or whatever. And so they check them all, and, like, every time they check it and there's nothing in it, they're like, me. And he's like, and they're like, me. And they're like, me. And he's like, and then they open one and there's flood in it. They all swarm out and fucking eat one of them, and they gotta kill them all. And they're like, good thing he told us to check them all. And he's like, fuck all you. I'm the best. And then at the very, very end, like, Master Chief's at the Pillar of Autumn. He's making his way through there, and, like, the elite sets up his one last trap to take him out. And, like, the grunt helps him set it all up. And he's like, when I kill the demon, I'll let them know that you helped me, and we'll fucking be honored together. And the grunt's like, fucking whatever. I don't care. Like, the demon can't be stopped. He's coming here for a reason. He can smell the end. Like, he can tell, like, this is it. We're all gonna die. This is the end for all of us. He can just feel it. So he just takes a bunch of rations and some gas tanks, and he fucks off, and he's like, just whatever. I'll enjoy the end of the world on my own terms. And he gets a little POV perspective when the Pillar of Autumn blows up and Halo gets destroyed. Where he's like, yeah, I'm okay with this. I had a good run. You know, it was so great. It was so great. And then, like there's, like, 3 narratives where, like, it's the Covenant chapters, Master Chief just a retelling of the events of the game, and then there's this ODST commander and, like, the human side, and where like the ODST are this cool regiment of the UNSC where they get dropped in on pods. They get dropped in like from like above orbit, and they get dropped in to the planet through the atmosphere in these little like one-man pods, and it's very much airborne kind of thing where they're dropping in behind enemy lines, and they have all these jokes where they're like, okay guys, your regular Marines are going down to the plant, to the Halo in fucking drop ships, sipping tea and having fucking blowjobs. How are we going down? Feet first! And they're like, yeah, we're badass. Like, they're called hell divers because they just drop in feet first into hell. And there's this scene where they're all dropping in on their pods, and like one person's chute of their pod doesn't open, and so they're just gonna crash and die. And you hear them screaming, and the like commander just silences their comms so that no one else has to hear it, because they're like, that's the reality we'll have to face, but no one has to fucking hear about it. And they all land in there, and then like when they set up HQ, like their human like base of operations on Halo that everyone kind of gets sent back to. Like, all the surviving military personnel go there, and the highest ranking guy, aside from Commander Keyes, is the ODST guy who fucking hates Master Chief, who fucking hates Spartans, and fucking hates them. And John's cool, he's like, what the fuck did I do, man? Like, whatever, have your bone to pick, I don't give a shit. Like, he's just, like, very, like, he's just, I don't care, I'm a soldier. And this fucking ODST guy's like, fucking hate you so much. And John's like, he doesn't even shrug, like, there's just no reaction. And he has this second in command who's this chick, and she probably has the most going on with her. Because, like, at some point, they start fighting the Flood. And one of the Flood dudes is one of the guys in that mission where Sergeant Johnson, and that's one of those scenes where he totally fucking dies. And in the book they were like, I don't know how I survived, because in that scene he was leading a squad in there, I think it was Jenkins, and they all get mauled by the Flood. And Jenkins, like, by pure luck, had the one Flood parasite who was like kind of decomposed during their hibernation. And when he got infested, he still retained a modicum of consciousness. Like, he still had his faculties as a human, but he was still being controlled by the Flood parasite, so there was kind of a back and forth there for a while. And he was in agony. Like, he was like, I have no mouth and I must scream, for a while. Where he was like, just, I want to die. Someone kill me. A Covenant, a human. Like, I'm being sent to fight, and I just want to die. This sucks so bad. And they, like, there's this scene where, like, the Covenant and the humans are fighting each other, and the Flood came out of fucking nowhere and attacked both sides, and they were like, fuck, 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 ah! And then, like, Jenkins was part of a Flood group that attacked the humans, and by complete chance, again, like, the second in command lady, like, tied him down and was like, we're taking this one in alive. He's like, God damn it. And so, like, they take him back to base, and she's, like, trying to interrogate him. Like, he's a crazy Flood dude, and all the other Marines are like, he's just a crazy Flood dude. And she's like, no, dude, he's fucking Private Jenkins. He's a member of this Marine Corps, and he's gonna be treated with the same modicum of respect. He's just fucking, has a fucking infection or whatever. And he's like, no, dude, seriously. And, like, she tries to give him some water from a canteen at one point, and he breaks his own arm and tries to cut her with because he's, like, tied up like this. And he breaks his own arm to get the bone to go through his skin and starts trying to cut her to death with the bone. And it's like, oh! She's like, and like, the effort to do that really wore out the parasite so that Jenkins is able to take control of himself again, and he starts pointing at the ground, and like trying to get their attention and pointing at the ground, and they're all like, what's he doing? She's like, he's pointing at the ground. And they go in there and check it out, and like the Flood were trying to break into the base from underneath, or like a sewage system or something. They were trying to cut through and get in there, and they were like, another day and they would have gotten in and we all would die. We all would have been dead. And so they're like, oh, and so they gotta like figure out a more permanent solution, because they're like, the Flood are gonna get in here at some point. We can defend it, but it's so fucked up. And there's a scene where like the grunt dude that I was talking about before, they arrange it for him to get kidnapped. Like they arrange this scene, like they have this plan to have him as a double agent inside the base, because they're like, for some reason those crazy humans take prisoners. We don't take prisoners. Except they took Commander Key's prisoner because they wanted to find out where Earth is, because they want to go to Earth and kill everyone. So and that was a really sad scene where like him and his bridge command and his bridge crew got down to Halo, and they were like, let's all rock out with our cocks out, but get the fuck out of here. And one member of the bridge crew was freaking out. She's like, let's just surrender, man. I'm tired, you guys. They're like, shut up, lady. And so they're like, we can't keep dragging her around. So Commander Key's like, just tie her up and leave her here. She's like, you're leaving me here to die? And he's like, no, you're surrendering, because they're being chased by the Covenant this whole time. And then like they get so far away, and then a Covenant ship comes down, and there's just nothing they can do. So they're like, fucking, what can we do? And they throw their guns down, basically. And the chick they had tied up comes out, and she's like, see, I told you, they're just gonna take us prisoner. And then one Covenant dude's like, which one's the captain? And she's like, that one. And all the other dudes are like, well, you stupid fucking bitch. And they just kill everyone except Commander Keyes. And it's really sad, because you're like, I like those characters, but they're all dead now. And they just kill them all. Like, it really describes it in really brutal detail, where like one ducked to the side and tried to grab a gun, but they weren't fast enough, and they get shot down. And then the chick who betrayed them starts crying. She's like, I didn't know. They told me. And then like the Covenant dude picks up a human gun and shoots her in the head with it. And then they just take Commander Keyes prisoner, and that's why you have to save him later in the game. Like, he's like super bummed out because they were his fucking bridge crew. Like, imagine if Captain Picard, if fucking, you know, everyone else on TNG died, basically. Anyway, so, like, they're like, those crazy humans take prisoners. We don't, but they do, so that's weird. So what we're gonna do is beat the shit out of you and pretend that you were in a crash while out on patrol, and they'll find you and take you prisoner, and then you'll be inside the human base, and you'll be able to send a message to us so that we can go and attack them. And he's like, that's dumb. You're all dumb. I hate everything, but he can't do anything about it. So he gets held captive there for a while. And there's this scene where they're walking through the halls, and there's this hallway that's just covered in blood because a huge firefight took place there. And there's a bunch of grunt POWs cleaning it up while one Marine's like standing guard over them. And I'm like, those poor grunts, because I feel bad for the grunts. And then later, like, there's this huge battle that takes place when the Covenant come and invade, but they're like, fuck it, we were gonna bounce anyway. So they get the fuck out of there, and they like find this Covenant ship and commandeer it. And like, this is like near the very, very end of the book. And they're like, we're gonna take this ship and we're gonna go back to Earth with it, because fuck yeah. And they're like, there's like a fuck ton of flood on this ship though. Like, there's a bunch of flood on here. We'll be taking them back to Earth with us. And he's like, yeah, we'll be able to study them and maybe even use them as a weapon against the Covenant. And she's like, that's a bad idea, but shoot, he doesn't fucking listen to anything. So then, like, right before they're about to leave, like, there's this scene where she's like, if we take the Flood back to Earth, that's the end of everything forever. And, like, she knows that, but she's in denial about it a little bit, because, like, the fucking dude in charge gave an order. But then, like, she's in the room where Private Jenkins is being kept captive with them, and he knows, like, dude, look at me. Are you kidding me? Taking these things back to Earth? And, like, they're in the engine room or something like that, and he starts giving her a sign or whatever, and she understands what it means, and so she tells the dude who's keeping watch, like, go, leave me with him, I'll be fine. And, like, when they're alone together, she pulls out these fucking grenades or whatever and blows up the engine and destroys the ship from the inside out and sends it crashing back into Halo and killing everyone on board. Lives spent. You can't take the flood back to Earth. It's fucked up. There's even a part in Halo 3 where the flood land in like in the area you're in, and you gotta fight them, and you kill them, and then there's like the good, like, shit happened, and the Covenant, like the elites at least, turn good, and they show up and they start, like, no questions asked, start glassing the shit out of Africa. Like, they just, like, Africa has been wiped off the fucking map because one parasite lands there. Fuck it, glass the entire planet. You can't risk that shit. And, like, in the cutscene afterwards, he's like, I would have glassed the entire planet Earth, except the Arbiter said it's fine. Like, you can't take a risk with this shit. And that's what was going to happen if you took him back to the fucking planet. So, like, life spent. Like, it's either everyone on that ship and everyone who had survived, or the entire planet Earth and the entire rest of the human race. Gotta fucking deal with it. And so, like, anyway, back to the fucking Spartans. Like, they end up at Reach again, and this one area is still safe. And so they go down there and land there. And they know the Covenant don't want to kill them because they have this artifact, and they don't know what it does or what it is, but they know the Covenant want it, so they're not going to blow them up. Because they don't want to risk blowing up the artifact. And so they go down there, and they're like, why aren't the Covenant trying to get in here? And obviously it's this fucking Forerunner base, or whatever, that has all this Forerunner technology. And that's where all the survivors are, and they get them all out of there and go back on their ship, and they're trying to bounce out, and during their adventures, they come across this, like, group of pirate rebels or whatever, and they set up a little alliance, like a fucking unsteady alliance with them, and that whole book was really kind of confusing, to be honest with you, and I read it years ago, so I don't remember it very well. And then, like, the climax of the book is they gotta go on this fucking space station. I think it's like a human, like, they go on this human ship to bounce out on that. And, like, half of them go on the human ship, and the other half stay on the Covenant ship, and they had to go on this fucking satellite to get the human ship out of there. And, like, John and his Spartans went, and one of the Spartans was Linda, and, like, she was significant. I think it was Linda, hold on. Halo, Linda, Spartan. Yep, Linda, I was right. Yeah, she's, like, a sniper, and she's notable for being, like, a lone wolf. Was it Bill? Or Fred? William, yeah, I was right. I am surprised I'm remembering these names so well. Anyway, so, like, Linda's significant because she's a sniper, and she's, like, a lone wolf, and she acts as her own spotter. And, like, all the other Spartans are, like, really good teammates, and they all excel at, like, fucking tactical strategic teammanship. And Linda's like, no, I'm just gonna hang back over here and be on myself. So, like, she goes on the ship with John, and she's covering them. And it's significant because, like, even when, like, the space station's gonna explode because they got the human ship out of there and they're bouncing out, like, she's still at her station providing sniper cover fire for everyone else. And John's like, no, bitch, seriously, we gotta go. And she just keeps covering everyone with the sniper fire, and he's like, for fuck's sake, you stupid bitch. And he has to, like, go over there and practically drag her out of her spot and take her home because he's like, no more MIAs for you, Missy. And, like, I think Kelly and Bill and all of them and Dr. Hazley get trapped in, like, the subspace or whatever on a different ship, and they end up in this whole other place, and they're in this other book that I never fucking read. So I think they all died. I'm not sure. And, like, John and a couple other Spartans and Linda, they all make it back home. This one military commander dude, he's staying on the Covenant ship, and he, you know, sacrificed himself with a couple other dudes in a trap. Like, he had this holographic projection of the artifact, And he was like, come and get it, motherfuckers. And then when they all got close enough, they blew up the ship and took them all out with them, letting everyone on the human ship escape and get back to Earth. And then, they got there just in time for Halo 2 to happen. And, oh man. That was a long video. So, yeah. You see what I mean? Halo was, never a very story-heavy franchise, but it had enough to it that I spent a fucking hour sitting here talking about it. Destiny, I talked about in 10 minutes, if that. That's being generous. The first half of the first 10 minutes of this video, I was talking about Destiny. The entire other hour, I was talking about Halo, and the story in Halo, and all the significant shit that happened, mostly in the books. The games, again, never really had that strong suit to it, but, they still had a good couple moments. In Halo 2, it had that split narrative between Master Chief and the Arbiter, and, while Master Chief was getting these honors, these military honors and promotions for surviving on Halo, the Arbiter, who was the commander of the Covenant fleet at Halo when it was destroyed, and he was an utter failure, he gets stripped of his ranks and dishonored as a heretic because he failed so hard. They're you fucking you basically committed blasphemy by fucking up as hard as you fucking did. And so while Master Chief is getting all promoted, Arbiter's getting dishonored, and he becomes the Arbiter, which is this special class for his species, the elites, who were whenever a great upheaval happened in their society, the Arbiter showed up, and he's this religious soldier who gets sent on suicide missions to quell the bullshit that took place. And so you fucked up super hard, but we're gonna let you be Arbiter so that basically he's committing seppuku. You can reclaim your lost honor by going on these suicide missions and getting yourself killed in service to the Covenant. And he's sure thing. And it's actually pretty nifty that this guy who's been branded as a heretic is wearing this holy armor and going on crusade missions, basically. One-man crusades. And there's these parallels between the missions you go on as Master Chief and the missions you go on as Arbiter. And in retrospect, it was really interesting, and it had a lot of fun stuff for me where I always play those games, I try to save all the NPCs. Every friendly soldier or marine who fights alongside you, I try to make sure they all live. And then when you're playing as the Arbiter and you're going on missions with him, he kind of piggybacks on top of this group of super special elite Covenant who are going on super special elite missions. And there's a bunch of grunts with them. It's elites and a dozen or so grunt, super special elite grunts. And it's really fun to get to fight alongside the grunts and try and save them because they don't have shields and they're super weak because they're grunts, and you gotta make sure they live, and it's super great. And he has this teeth gritted oh, I don't like this guy, but god damn it, I respect you relationship with the guy in charge of the special elite group. And he has a cool backstory where half of his mandibles got cut off, so he's all scarred and only has 2 mandibles. And there's a scene where he's fucking, we're gonna go in there and you, the prophet said you have to come, but fuck you, I don't give a shit about you. Their lives matter to me, yours does not. And Arbiter responds to that makes 2 of us. And he's I don't give a shit about my own life either, I'm here on a suicide mission. And he's respect. And so they go in there and they're fighting heretics on this fucking facility, the gas giant that Halo was orbiting, and there's a Forerunner research facility there, and they're okay, we gotta mop up because a bunch of heretics took it over. And they go in there and fight a whole bunch of heretical Covenant and a bunch of Flood, and they're fuck, there's the Flood also, so that's not good. And they go through there, and like, well, we got to get in there and kill him, and we got to deal with this flood situation. And so they look, and so the Arbiter's looking at this facility because it's this fucking dangling facility hanging by a cable over a gas giant. And so he's like, I'm gonna cut that cable and send the facility hurtling into the gas giant. You guys all bounce. I'm gonna go do that on my little suicide mission. And they're like, cool beans. And they leave. And so he goes up there and cuts the cable, and it's this great fucking moment where you cut the cable and like everything's silent and you just hear this creaking and groaning for a couple seconds, and then all of a sudden, shoom! It's this really cool moment where you're like, oh, and everything like fucking flies up and then slowly floats back down because like everything's just hurtling into the void. And for the entire rest of the mission, the gravity is all different and the jump projections are weird. And so you go back down there and you kill the fucking heretic, and you find out the reason he became a heretic was because he found 343 Guilty Spark, and Guilty Spark told him the truth about what the Halos were. Like, they were all worshipping it as this religious shit, and then he finds out from 343 what it actually is, and that makes him, you know, betray the Covenant. And then, like, he's like, check this prophet, yo, and he told me the truth, and it's 343, and he's like, what up? And he's like, you talked to the fucking prophet? And he's like, yeah, listen to what he has to say, it'll blow your mind. And what's dumb is that 343 is like, yeah, I'm about to tell you, and then the fucking heretic leader starts shooting at the Arbiter, and you gotta fight him, and you fight him, and you kill him, and 343 is like, oh, it was a bummer, he was kind of interesting, and the Arbiter's like, what can I do, man? This heretic inhibited the great journey. And the prophet's like, what the and 343 is like, what the fuck is the great journey? What are you fucking talking about? Because the great journey to them is activating the Halo rings, and they think it's gonna send them on their paradise or whatever. They don't know that it actually wipes out all life in the universe. I don't know why the prophets think this is a good idea. I think they might just be assholes. But like, the Halo 2 presented this insight into the Covenant society and their views on things, and they think it's all over this like religious crusade, and they're like gonna get this fucking the great journey. We gotta kill the humans because they're inhibiting the great journey, and then the Halos are these religious things, and then the whole plot of Halo 2 is building up to the Covenant finding out the truth. And there's the meeting of the minds where Master Chief goes and kills one of the prophets and then like falls into this encounter with the Flood Gravemind, and then the Arbiter gets betrayed by the Brutes because this new species, the Brutes, showed up and they started having this conflict with the Elites and were starting to like replace them at like the Elites were disgraced because like they haven't exterminated the humans yet. It's been years and years and years and years and years. Why haven't we exterminated the humans yet? You guys suck. We're going to replace you with the Brutes. And then, like, you know, the catastrophe of the first Halo was kind of the final straw. And so, like, slowly the Brutes start replacing the Elites as, like, the main dudes that you fight as part of the Covenant. And you witness that from both sides, where you witness that from the Marine perspective, where, like, every time, like, every encounter with a Brute is kind of rare, and you're like, oh shit, when it happens, and then they slowly start becoming more and more common throughout the enemy ranks. And then, like, from the other perspective, you're watching the Elites getting replaced internally. Like, in the first couple missions, you're fighting nothing but Elites, and then you are fighting amongst the Elites, and then later it slowly builds, and, like, you encounter more and more Brutes as enemies. You're dealing with Brute assholes fighting alongside you during those missions. And then finally, like, the Arbiter gets fucking betrayed and cast aside. And then he ends up with the Gravemind. And, like, there's a second Halo. And that the Flood have just completely overtaken after all this time. Like, the Flood dominate this Halo by the time anyone else shows up. And that's what a Gravemind is. A Gravemind is, like, this huge mass of Flood parasite gunk that has taken on a consciousness like a Rat King or something like that. And he's like, yo, I'm talking in iambic pentameter because Bungie has a hard-on for the number 7. And they're all like, oh. And so, like Master Chief's like, that's fucked up. And Arbiter's like, what the fuck? And, like, he's giving all these revelations to him, like, yo, guess what? Fucking Halo gonna kill everyone on the planet. And he's like, that's not the great journey. And Master Chief's like, you're an idiot. And then, like, he gets teleported to, like, Covenant High Command to go do some shit on there. And the Gravemind sent him there as a pretext so that he could send his flood ships there to crash their party and start infecting all the Covenant. So then you gotta fight Covenant dudes and Flood while you're going through that area and try and kill the main Prophet because everyone hates that guy now. Like, the Flood hate him because he wants to activate Halo, and they're like, no, dude, we're really hungry, don't do that. And Master Chief wants to do it because, like, fuck the Covenant. And then Arbiter's like, oh, they lied to us, fuck those guys. So then he gets sent back down to Halo, and he starts teaming up with the Marines and, like, working with them. And like, he meets up with Sergeant Johnson, and Sergeant Johnson's like, yo, you don't like me, and I don't like you, but if they turn on that Halo, everyone's gonna die. And it's this big deal because, like, Miranda Keyes, who's Captain Keyes' daughter, she got kidnapped by the Brutes and dragged with them to go activate Halo because you need to have a human to activate Halo because they're the ones closest to the Forerunner DNA and none of the Covenant are close enough to activate Halo. They need to have an actual human hand push the key in to activate Halo. So that's why they took her, and they're all like, fuck. And so you gotta fight through and get there to fight this brute to stop the main head brute with a mohawk. And you get to him, and like, I'm even skipping, like, there's other stuff that I talked over that happened before that I want to keep talking about, because, like, that climax of Halo 2 is really cool, because at the beginning of the game, when you're Master Chief, you end up on Africa, this African planet, which all this stuff in ODST happened that I could talk about, because ODST was a really cool game. God damn it. But, like, I'm just gonna try and focus here, because, like, that whole section in Africa was building up to the fact that there's this huge Covenant weapon called a Scarab. And the Scarab is super... All the naming conventions are badass, by the way. The Scarab is like this super powerful, unstoppable fucking AT-AT walker just bopping through, blowing everyone away. And the whole campaign in Africa is building up to you taking on the Scarab. And then, like, you finally jump onto the Scarab and fight the crew and blow it up from the inside out. And, like, yeah, you beat the Scarab, and that's when you leave Africa and go to the new Halo. And, like, it built up this Scarab as this huge, badass thing. And then at the very end of the game, when you're the Arbiter teaming up with the Marines, Sergeant Johnson commandeered a Scarab, and now the Scarab is fighting with you, and you're providing cover for the Scarab, and it's just blowing away all these fucking Covenant dudes. It's being manned by Marines, and, like, they use it to blow a hole open in the facility, and it's like, holy shit. And then you get to Halo 3, and there's whole vehicle sections built around fighting Scarabs on little mini fucking, like, ATVs with a dude sitting on the back with a rocket launcher shooting at the Scarabs, and they're actual things in games. They're not just set pieces anymore like it was in Halo 2. They're actual enemies that you have fucking protracted engagements with, and you can shoot them in the legs until they start getting weak, and you can jump on the back and blow it up, and it's this big deal. And then at the very, very last level, you're fighting 2 at once. And it's like, oh, that build-up of the Scarab from, like, huge thing, there's a whole campaign around fighting it, then you commandeer it, then it's just a regular enemy. And, like, that was... Narrative might not have been its thing, but stuff like that escalation like that, is something that Halo did really well with a whole bunch of different things. And holy shit, I kept talking for like 20 more minutes after I said I was fucking done. Why was I on the hate wagon for Halo for so long? Apparently, I have really, really fond memories of it. You know, like those games were pretty dang good. You know, Halo 3 was probably the weakest one, and then ODST. I could have a whole other video about ODST. It had this. It had the cast of Firefly reuniting. It had this whole. It had the character of Virgil who like spoken emotes, and he was really cute. And it had this huge allegory to Dante's Inferno with Virgil. Oh my god, ODST was a really fucking legitimately good game. But oh my god, I've talked for so long. My throat hurts. I think I got my point across. Halo was really great. Flawed. Incredibly flawed. And ruined video games. But in terms of like lore, in terms of, you know, setting narrative, miles better than fucking Destiny. You know, like, I'll tell you this. When they start releasing Destiny books, I will be on that shit. I will be on that shit to read the Destiny books. Until then, get your shit together, Bungie. You used to be great. You used to be great. Not so much anymore. Now the Halo name is being dragged through the mud by 343 Guilty Spark Industries, making fucking Halo 4 and 5, which are terrible. And Bungie, you're going crazy and self-destructing. Activision's fucking you in the ass, and you made Destiny, which, while fun shooting gameplay-wise, totally shit the bed in terms of, you know, story and lore, which I had come to expect from the guys who did fucking Halo. Shame. Shame, shame. It's so funny to me to think back on all this stuff that, like, I lived through in my youth, you know, growing up in the 2000s when the Halo craze was taking the world by storm. And now I'm looking back on it now, it's like, wow. That shit was actually kind of crazy. I'm gonna go back to playing some Halo. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time.